What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power.
And power you shall have with these builds. Greetings Exiles and welcome to my 3.13 Path of Exile Ritual and Echoes of the Others expansion League Starter collection I put together for you. My name is Jay and I hope you are as excited and hyped about the new patch just as I am. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we can get into the juicy part of the video, which are obviously the builds, I would like to talk about some general stuff. First of all, if you find yourself enjoying this video, then, consider dropping a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and also follow my Twitch channel, where I'm going to stream during the league start, and then I'm probably going to stop again depending on how the league goes. And yeah, if you want to support me financially, you can just add an exception for your ad blocker. That would really help. Thank you very much. All the help is greatly appreciated. Something quite important I want to talk to you about is something that I actually didn't share with you in my previous league starting videos, which is how I basically determine what build is good and what build is probably not going to be good. And over the course of that, I'm also going to talk about the new mechanics, because new league, new mechanics, new content. It's basically, if a build was good before, you just have to add the new mechanics and see if the build fits there as well. So, in the upcoming expansion, we basically only got two things which are kinda the same. We got the Ritual League, which are some fights within the maps usually, and the Echo encounters where you can fight bosses. Both of those are going to be held in a big circle arena. For rituals, you are mostly going to find or to fight buffed up monsters like you would find in a normal map, with the occasional boss in between them. Echoes, however, will, at least that's what I believe, be a lot harder, since you can fight against up to 10 map bosses at the same time. Knowing these two basic conditions, which is an enclosed area and a lot of tough enemies, I worked out 3 things a build should have to be able to clear these endgame encounters. Number 1, damage. Of course, the more damage the better, but your build should be able to provide sustained damage or burst rotations. Which leads me to the second point, a sustained defense. Unless you one-shot everything and you're never getting hit, you will need a strong way to recover your defenses, either while attacking with leeching or between burst phases with flask recharge or just overall regeneration. That, on the other hand, means you need to buy yourself time to recover or charge bursts with solid movement or debuffs on multiple targets. Builds that can do hit and run should, generally work if you are carefully planning your positioning and your route. The first build I want to talk about is basically the pinnacle of hit and run, or I should better say hit while running. It's of course Cyclone. I got a champion version of the build since it is overall, even with the nerfs, a solid choice for everything, especially on the league start. Being pure physical provides large impale scaling damage wise, while the Ascendancy takes care of many strong defensive and utility stats. You might have also noticed that there are 2 builds at the top. The second one being my Reef and Blight Flurry champion. Both builds basically share the same scaling tree and Ascendancy and a lot of the same gear, so that's why I paired them up like that. The biggest difference between them is the playstyle. Cyclone is super relaxed and easy to play, And if you play Reef Blade Flurry, the Reef will have a lot of AoE up to screen wide, and the Blade Flurry is some of the most disgusting damage you will ever see, but it comes at the price of being, quite hard to pull off in a really good way. And, before you guys start commenting about the champion nerfs, no, don't do it. Let me tell you that with bad gear, the nerf is about 20%, which, sounds a lot, but you have to keep in mind that this is only in single target situations, and the better your gear gets, the nerf is becoming less effective. So, but let me ask you something. Does this look like 20% less damage would really hurt? Well, I think not. So, everybody calm down. And, something. Just by the way, those 20% that we lose can easily be made up with just a few cheap harvest crafts. The next build was originally made by Methyl, and I personally just updated a few things here and there and made a few modifications. He played multiple different double strike characters, but I think with the 2 buffs this build received this patch, it is a very viable starter as the Berserker. A lot of added base damage and utility modifiers from the skill and the Ascendancy make this build deal significant damage without expensive gear. Having the option to use Vaal Double Strike in combination with Berserk will mow down any boss you can encounter in maps within a second or maybe 2. All the damage and speed comes with a drawback. Instead of providing defense, the Berserker Ascendancy actually makes you take increased damage. So keep that in mind when zooming through the zones. The last melee build I want to talk about is the Bladestorm Berserker. It also scales off of pure physical and impale as all the other builds I already mentioned. To be fair, you can play Bladestorm on any other melee ascendancy, but on Berserker it just feels that much nicer because of the movement and attack speed, which is necessary to get the most out of the skill. I am personally predicting this build to be super strong in rituals and echoes because of its natural possibility to play it hit and run style. The Bladestorms are leaving or they are behind you, damaging and actually leeching to you. Overall, it's not that easy and straightforward to play on a high level, but once you're getting used to it, it will feel amazing. Since this is also basically the same build but with a different main skill as Methyl's Double Strike, the same squishiness can be overwhelming at times, so it is even more important to have precise movement. Moving over to the ranged attacks, who would have guessed is my all-time favorite build, the Scorch Arrow Poison Pathfinder. But before saying anything else, here is a warning. This build is really freaking hard to play to dish out the most damage, especially in fast boss fights. And since nearly all the new content introduces tougher and more bosses, play this build only at your own risk and carefully listen to my guide. There are so many things you want to keep track of during a fight that you will probably or most likely end up either not dealing damage or just feel like you are always dying and you can't do anything. So yeah, it is very easy to mess up something in the build, so yeah, fair warning, I guess. But if played well, this build is an absolute killing machine no matter what content you face. You can also get like 7k life, huge evasion, permaflasks, multiple screen AoE, a lot of movement speed, and because it's a poison damage over time build, it is really scalable, especially with harvest crafting. There's one problem though. The league I first played this character on, one of the key items, the Darkscorn Bow, was around 1 to 2 exalted at the league start. The next league, after I published my guide, it was 8 exalted in the beginning. So what I'm trying to say here is that prices are highly meta dependent, which, in my opinion, apart from the difficulty, is actually the only real drawback of this beloved build of mine. So if you want a challenging build that can do everything if played well, go for it. Before you're scrolling down and want to start typing a comment, yes, this is my Toxic Rain Trickster from last league. Yes, it uses all the nerfed ascendancy nodes, and yes, I am fully aware of that. But if you really understand the nerfs and how the build is scaling, you will also understand that the nerfs aren't actually that bad. Once you got some basic gear going, you're probably not going to feel a thing. Instead, harvest crafting this league can take this build to even higher levels. The build overall feels very smooth to high attack and movement speed, allowing for a easy hit and run against tough enemies, which will be crucial for the new content this expansion introduces. And along with a high energy shield pool, my friend actually played this build last league and he hit more than 10,000 energy shield on it. Respect. And the recharge that comes with the energy shield in this build makes this build for probably the best all-rounder you can choose in my list. If you got absolutely no idea what to play, then this would be my recommendation if the playstyle suits you and if energy shield is something you can work with. The first close range spell build I want to feature is Isoro's Blade Vortex Chieftain. It offers a smooth playstyle, impressive damage and AoE scaling, as well as being a chieftain, which, makes you naturally tanky, or thick, as a lot of people want to say. All these things combined together make a build template that perfectly fits those players who want to tweak their build on every possible end, depending on personal preference. A huge drawback though can be the early core uniques, where prices have been jumping up and down over the past few leagues. But Isoro can tell you so much more about the build, so make sure to check out his guide and PoE, which, along with everything else I talk about in this video, can be found in the video description. The next build is an old classic of mine, the Vortex Tank Occultist. Slow and steady wins the race is the motto of this build. I designed the core of the build for easy, safe, and relaxed high ping boss carries on other servers, and then I tweaked it so it is actually viable in clearing situations as well. Occultist received a buff in both endgame damage and AoE clear speed, so I had to put the build into my list. You can get very tanky on the build with strong chill on bosses while maintaining a solid, but not high, sustained damage. This makes it a good build to explore the new expansion's content for less experienced players. And as with every character, and especially damage over time builds, this one can also become extremely powerful through harvest crafting. Most players probably don't have the next build on their lists, and I actually also struggled if I should include it or not. The reason why I decided for the build and for Zizzaran's Essence Drain Contagion Trickster was harvest crafting coming back into the league. As I said multiple times already, all builds and especially damage over time builds can heavily benefit from easy harvest crafting. The overall usability didn't change with the nerfs, so it will still be one of the fastest clearing characters that can handle all bosses in the game with ease, by just running around them and applying your dots from time to time. The biggest concern on this build always was the low single target damage, which usually was no big deal due to its apply and run nature. But this could be a problem now if you are facing up to 10 bosses in an area like the Echoes during the endgame. For more info on the general build, I recommend checking out Scissoran's well-made guide. The second long-range spell build on my list is also a build that I don't have a guide for, but I also tried out. Like, I played this one, I also played the one made by Isoro, by Methyl, by Scissoran. I tried all the builds on my list just to be sure they are actually working. And yeah, this one is the Ball Lightning Ascendant by Big Dax. He made a great job puzzling together and explaining a strong and versatile build. With the ascendancy changes that are overall opening up a few different choices, this will become really interesting once you get a hang of it. The strong burst potential from the Unleash perfectly fits into playing hit and run in Echoes and Rituals. The fast regen and mobility are giving you the opportunity to avoid getting splatted instantly by most bosses, even if there are 10 of them. For more info on how to build, progress, and maybe tweak the character, please check out Big Duck's build guide, link is in the video description. Moving over to brands now. The first build I want to talk about is the Wintertide brand Trickster. Again, don't worry, Trickster is still the best ascendancy for this build, and the nerfs that apply pretty much only to the early game are fine since the skill deals a lot of damage while leveling anyways. The combination of potentials, a lot of energy shield, block, and the damage being over time makes this a very strong boss killer. Single target may not be huge, but since it is relatively safe, I recommend the build to anybody who would otherwise get bored by playing Vortex and want a more active, higher damage but also harder playstyle. I can actually see problems rising from the top and echoes with a lot of bosses, since the damage itself is not real AoE damage. But we will see how it'll work, and I'm sure it would be fine nonetheless. If you like the idea of Cold Dot, make sure to check out Creeping Frost as well. The other brand build on here is another classic of mine, the Stormbrand Inquisitor. That's an exceptional, well-rounded build with smooth scaling and a lot of possibilities to change it on the fly however you prefer. Inquisitor received a very nice buff to make it feel even better on all gearing stages, and we just had to make a few small changes to the build. Brand mechanics have always been very convenient and strong for all content, so I'm expecting this build to outperform many other builds when it comes to the new Echo and ritual mechanics. The playstyle, however, is not the easiest, but with a little training and a conscious mind while you are flying through the maps, league mechanics, and boss encounters, you will have a lot of fun. I want to end this list with something that I am personally not very interested in, but I'm always getting asked for it. What about minions, zombies, golems, SRS? What about specters, and which specters are the best? I always get those questions, even though I am pretty much always saying that minion builds are, not the builds that I usually play. So instead of asking me, I can highly recommend you check out Kay's YouTube channel. She produces amazing and detailed content, tries basically every specter type they keep introducing into the game, and if somebody will come up with a good specter build, even though it was heavily nerfed, I'm sure she's the one to look at. And that's my list. If I personally cannot find a new build for myself, then I'll be either playing Stormbrand or Scourge Area, since these are my most favorite builds and I'm 100% sure these are going to be extremely strong. The build I would suggest the most is still the Toxic Rain Trickster. Anybody who played it into Endgame told me how nice it was to play, and I am sure that's still going to be the case even with the nerfs. If you dislike Energy Shield or the playstyle, then I recommend the Stormbrand Inquisitor. If you want to play melee only, I recommend the Bladestorm Berserker if you've never played that, or the Reef and Blade Flurry Champion. For those who seek a real challenge, can either play just a Doctor build, or try the Scorch Arrow Poison Pathfinder, which is a beautiful but very difficult character to play. Before I'm finally wrapping up the whole video, I want to give some general advice to everybody who couldn't find or decide on a build yet. In the beginning of the video, I told you what a build has to offer to succeed in the new mechanics. If you combine that knowledge and anything that worked last league, except aura stacking and maybe specters, you will have yourself a viable build. It's that easy. If you want to try something new, the new Inquisitor, Occultist, and Elementalist seem very potent. Damage over time builds are still going to be strong, and if you have a melee build you wanted to try on a different ascendancy, Slayer, Berserker, and Raider are quite interesting with their own specific benefits. Really important to mention here is that all PoBs will be updated as soon as PoB itself got the update. Please also make sure that you are installing the PoB community fork, otherwise you will not be able to view all the featured builds. Also remember to like, subscribe, comment, follow my Twitch, join the Discord, and spread love to all the great content creators I mentioned in this video, as well as to all the other community as well, especially Reddit. It seems like those need a lot of love these days. I hope that I will see some of you on my stream over at Twitch, where I'm going to theorycraft what I will play a few hours before the league finally starts. Get hyped, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jay, and I'm out.